Many of the world's greatest and bravest men and women have given their last words before meeting an untimely demise. However, this video will be different. Hello my friends and welcome. Today we will be discussing 20 most famous last words from death row inmates. Without further ado, let's begin. Number 1. Gary Gilmore. Gary Gilmore, an American criminal who was remembered for demanding his execution after he killed 2 people in Utah. He was executed by firing squad after giving the final words, "Let's do it." Number 2. Aileen Wuornos. Aileen Wuornos was a female serial killer who killed 7 men in Florida at point-blank range. On November 9th, 2002, she simply said, "I'd just like to say I'm sailing with the Rock and I'll be back like Independence Day with Jesus, June 6th, like the movie, big mothership and all, I'll be back," before being lethally injected. Number 3. Robert Comer. Robert Comer was a convicted murderer who killed his campground neighbor Larry Pritchard in 1987. He was sentenced to death by lethal injection. Before his execution, his famous 2 last words were, "Go Raiders!" Number 4. John Wayne Gacy. John Wayne Gacy was an American serial killer and rapist who sexually assaulted and murdered 33 teenage males. On May 10, 1994, before his lethal injection, John's final words were, "Kiss my ass." Number 5. John Jenkins. John Jenkins was an Australian murderer who, alongside with his accomplice, Thomas Tattersdale, was thrown in jail for the murder of Dr. Robert Wardell. In November of 1834, about to be hung for execution, he muttered the words, "Let every villain shake hands with himself." Number 6. Edward Ellis. Edward Ellis was a convicted murderer who was also known as the Bathtub Slayer. His victims were always found in bathtubs. He finally was executed by lethal injection after he spoke the words, "I just want everyone to know that the prosecutor and Bill Scott are sorry sons of bitches." Number 7. Robert Alton Harris. Robert Alton Harris was a convicted murderer who killed 2 teenage boys in San Diego in the year of 1978. He was to be executed by gas chamber in 1992. Before he was executed, he simply spoke the words, "You can be a king or a street sweeper, but everybody dances with the Grim Reaper." Number 8. Jeffrey Dahmer. Jeffrey Dahmer was an American serial killer and sex offender who was later found to be a necrophiliac and a cannibal. He murdered and raped 17 men and boys and was sentenced to prison. On November 28, 1994, Dahmer was beaten to death in prison by a fellow inmate named Christopher Scarver. The last words he said to him were, "I don't care if I live or die. Go ahead and do it." Number 9. Thomas J. Grasso. Thomas J. Grasso was a murderer who was convicted for the murders of Hilda Johnson and Leslie Holtz. On March 20th, 1995, he gave his last words, which evidently were about his last meal.
"I did not get my SpaghettiOs. I got spaghetti. I want the press to know this."
Number 10. Westley Allan Dodd. Westley Allan Dodd was an American serial killer and child molester who killed and raped 3 children. He was sentenced to death by hanging in 1953. Before he was hung, he spoke the words, "I was once asked by somebody, I don't remember who, if there was any way sex offenders could be stopped. I said no. I was wrong." Number 11. Jose Villegas. Jose Villegas was a murderer who killed 3 people in 2001. He was convicted for his crimes and sentenced to death by lethal injection. Before he was executed, he said the words, "It does kind of burn." Number 12, Barbara Graham. Barbara Graham, nicknamed Bloody Babs, was an American criminal and convicted murderer. She robbed a bank as well as murdering Mabel Monahan with accomplices. Her final words before being executed by gas chamber were,
"Good people are always so sure they're right."
Number 13, Jeffrey Matthews. Jeffrey Matthews was a murderer and convicted bank robber. Jeffrey killed his uncle Otis Short, attempting to rob the man and shot him in the head. At trial, he was sentenced to death, and his last words were,
"I think the governor's phone is broke. He hadn't called yet."
"14. George Harris. George Harris was an American convicted criminal and murderer who shot and killed a man during an argument. He was convicted for his crimes and sentenced to death on September 13th in 2000. His final words were, "Somebody needs to kill my trial attorney." Number 15, James D. French. James D. French was an American criminal who was the last person executed under Oklahoma's death penalty laws, which suspended capital punishment in America from 1972 and 1976. He was convicted for murdering a motorcyclist and his cellmate. Before he was executed, he stated,
"How's this for a headline? French fries."
Number 16, George Apple. George Apple was an American convicted murderer. He was convicted of first-degree murder for killing a police officer in New York City in 1928. The court sentenced him to death by electric chair. His last words were,
"Well, gentlemen, you're about to see a baked apple."
Number 17, Carl Panzram. Carl Panzram was a convicted murderer, rapist, arsonist, and burglar. He claimed he had committed 21 murders and sodomized over 1,000 boys and men. Before he was hung for his crimes, he yelled,
"Hurry it up, you hooser bastard! I could kill 10 men while you're fooling around."
Number 18, Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy was an American serial killer, kidnapper, burglar, rapist, and necrophile, who may have killed more than 60 women, but only confessed to 30 of them. He was to be executed by electric chair. In his speech, he quoted,
"I'd like you to give my love to my family and friends."
Number 19, Tom Ketchum. Tom Ketchum was a cowboy who turned to a life of crime. He was arrested for train robbery and sentenced to death by hanging. Before he was hung, his final words were,
"I'll be in hell before you start breakfast, boys. Let her rip."
Number 20, Peter Curtin. Peter Curtin, also known as the Vampire of Dusseldorf, or the Dusseldorf Monster, was a German murderer and rapist who killed a total of 9 people in the 1900s. He was finally caught May 24th and sentenced to death by guillotine. Before being decapitated, he looked up and asked the executioner,
"Tell me, after mine head has been chopped off, will I still be able to hear, for a moment, the sound of my own blood gushing from the stump of my neck? That would be the pleasure to end all pleasures."
If you like this video, please like and subscribe. It means a lot, and I wanted to say thank you again for watching this video. Have a wonderful day, and as always, I'll see you next time.